Welcome, Bill Tierney.
Thank you, Nick.
General Secretary of the IFBB, President of the UKBFF. It's a real pleasure to finally get you in the interview chair. Thank you for agreeing to be here for our Uncovered series.
My pleasure, Nick.
I know it's a long journey down for you. You live up in Liverpool.
That's correct, yeah. But we just come from Wales, actually, today.
Okay.
So
you do an awful lot of travelling.
we do a lot of travel. I don't know how many miles we do, but we travel all over the world, so we're always somewhere.
Yeah, well, I'm going to get to that, but I wanted to start off with your background and how you actually got into bodybuilding in the first place.
Well, it's a long story. It's about 55 years ago I started training at school. The gym master that we had he used to train after school hours, and he said to me, did I think I could have a little go with it? So I said, well, I didn't even know what it was then. So I said, yeah, fine, I would try it. So he used to do bench press, and he used to say, do you want to have a little go? So I said, do you do it this way? And he said, my goodness, he said, you're strong. And I didn't know anything about it then. So that's how I first started. He used to ask me to go for his protein at that time. It was rice pudding, believe it or not. Oh. So that's how far back it was. But he used to train every day after school hours, and I started doing that. I did it for a while. And then there was a guy that was into Olympic lifting that was also in this school that they used to do after hours. So I tried the Olympic lifting at that time. I was more interested in doing that when I first started. But it was very difficult to do Olympic lifting, and the guy unfortunately went back to South Africa. So I was a bit disillusioned then, so I didn't do anything then. But the guy that was actually there at the time had a gym in where I first started training, a guy called Vic Burdett. And he said, you know, you're obviously strong. Have you ever thought about competing in bodybuilding? So I said, I never ever thought about it, to be honest. So he said, I think you could be quite good. And that's how it started, really. I was approached by him. We went to Crosby Barbell, and that was my start with it all. I competed with him for a little bit until I was about 18. And then I thought, I don't really think this is that difficult, because I entered the show and won the first show. So I was disillusioned with it all and thought, I'd stop. So I stopped competing and training altogether. I started going out nightclubbing, dancing, and doing the normal stuff. But when I was about 21, I ended up going back to Crosby Barbell, and then I'd been at it since.
What was it, Crosby Barbell?
Crosby Barbell, it was called. Yeah.
And that was a gym?
It was a gym, very old-fashioned gym. There was holes in the roof, and a really basic gym. But we trained there for quite some time. It was never ever really modernised as such. At the time when you were training, Nick, if you went along the road with a gym bag, people used to stop you, the police especially, thinking that you'd just been and robbed somewhere, because that's how many people trained. But, you know, that's what I did, and that's what I loved to do. And I did it for quite some time.
And you competed then?
I competed all over the world, Nick. I was fortunate enough to start off at NABA when I first was into bodybuilding. And I did very well. I was placed always in the top 6 every time I competed. Great. I competed in nearly every country in the world. But then I was a little bit disillusioned with NABA, because I didn't particularly like the judging system at the time. And I then switched over to the IFBB. My first competition was actually in Wales. I competed there, and I was in second place. Again, I was a little bit disappointed, but that's the way that it was. I competed then with the IFBB quite a lot in all different countries as well. 3 times British champion, 2nd, 3rd, 4th. Never actually won. I was always the bridesmaid, which was unfortunate, but that's the way that it went. I just accepted, because that was the rules, the way they were then. Yeah. I've been everywhere. You know.
Was there a bodybuilder that you aspired to be like?
Arnold was always my favourite. Arnold Schwarzenegger, when he first competed down in London at the Mr. Universe, was just unbelievable. He was just a new level. You know, everyone was amazed when they were to see this young guy with such huge arms and a great physique. That's my ideal even now to this day. I think Arnold was ahead of his time. Arnold predicted then he would be a millionaire, he'd be a movie star, and he'd probably be the president of America. This is what he said then. And he's nearly reached all of them ambitions, I think. So he's still a person I think a lot of. Yeah. But Arnold also never forgets his roots with bodybuilding, because every time he does a seminar or introduction with something, he always says, without bodybuilding, he wouldn't be here. So he's a good ambassador as well as being a great bodybuilder.
Okay. And how did you get into being an official?
Well, again, getting back to what I just said, with the judging system as it was at the time, it was, if you was in the audience and you was a famous bodybuilder, you'd be asked to go and judge at a show. Even though you may not have been a good judge, just because of your notoriety, they would say to you, you know, you can judge, and this is what used to happen. So when I joined the IFBB, they had a system where you had to qualify as a judge, which I thought was something for me, because I thought you had to be qualified to do and judge with these guys that was on stage that give them a lot of time and effort to compete. I thought it was only right that they should be qualified to judge. So that's why I first got involved in it. I was a judge. I judged for a while. And then I got onto the executive board because I was passionate about getting the judging system a little bit better, a little bit more speeded up.
Was that the judging board in the UK?
In the UKBFF, yeah. And then that's what I started to do. I was on the executive committee. I was part of the organising of a show in my area, they call the Northwest. We promoted a show, and I wanted to make sure that the judging was done as good as possible, and that's what started me being involved. From then on, I was looking at the workings of the executive committee. At that time, Julian Feinstein was the president, and I got on very well with Julian. We used to go to most of the events, and a lot of people said, well, why don't you aim to be the president of the federation, because you're famous, you're a bodybuilder, and Julian isn't. I said, well, Julian does a good job. I'll leave things the way they are until Julian decided to step down, which is what he did do, and then I was elected as president, and I've been president of the UK for the past 20 years.
Right, okay.
So my passion is the judging system has to be 100% foolproof, which is what it is.
And you're known to be a stickler for rules.
Mm-hmm.
How does the judging process work?
Well, the judging process works, we have a judging committee within the IFBB. We have the chairman of the judging committee is a guy called Pavel Philiborn, who is again an ex-bodybuilder, also a powerlifter. Pavel's also a stickler for the rules, and normally Pavel and I decide on the different things that happen within the judging system. It can be improved or more things added. That's what we normally do, and we discuss. The thing is with the judging system that we have normally, it's been changed just recently. You always have 9 judges, but we used to have an alternative judge that sat on the end, just in case any of the judges in some of these countries just make a little bit of a mess of the judging papers. We can then call on the alternative judge. But what was tending to happen, the alternative judge really wasn't thinking that his papers were going to be used. So Pavel and I discussed it, that it might be wise that people didn't know who the alternative judge was. So what we do now is before the show starts, each judge is given a number, and the numbers are put into a hat, and then the numbers are picked out, so nobody knows which position the judge is in and what number the judge is in, except the statistician. So again, it stops any favoritism in any way.
Okay.
And the alternative judge doesn't know whether he's being used or not.
Would I be right in saying that the lowest scoring card and the highest scoring card are discarded?
Yeah. If you have 9 judges, the top 2 and the bottom 2 are taken off.
Top 2 and the bottom 2?
Yeah.
So you're left with 5 cards?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And the reason for that is that if you're biased in either way, if someone thinks someone should be in a higher position or a low position, it's taken off. And this is what happens. And
those, I mean, nowadays, I presume it's electronic, so the scorecards, those scores are taken by the statistician, put onto a computer, and that forms the basis of the results. The computer system that we've had, it's been developed for the past 4 or 5 years now. It's a system that is foolproof. It actually tells you if there's something that's got 2 the same marks, for example, it doesn't go through, the macros don't work, but it tells you that there's one of the cards that hasn't been marked right, because if you can appreciate, when you've got these competitions that's very busy, the person that usually sits next to the statistician calls the scores of each judge of each slip, and the statistician puts it in. Then they start the macros, and then it comes up if something has been put in wrong.
So it's a foolproof system that the computer tells you that you've made an error by saying something, so it's corrected, and then the system works out, and it's usually 100% correct. But it also gives, which a lot of people don't realize, the percentage of the judges as well. So the statistician has all the judges sheets put in, and on the bottom it gives the percentage rate of the judges' scores.
Okay.
So the judges are judged.
Right. And so I suppose any system is potentially open to abuse. I mean, that does sound like a...
Well, the reason that the statistician's job is very important is because of that, because it has to be someone that's very trustworthy, obviously, and they have to be protected, because when you're in some of these foreign countries, everyone's looking over the statistician's shoulder to see what the results are, but usually we have security behind that keeps the people, the prying eyes away, because the statistician is a very important job.
Do different judges have different specialities? I mean, are some better at open and...
Well, we originally, when we introduced the women's bikini, we thought as the UKBFF would keep it just purely women judging women, because we didn't want the predator situation to develop. If a judge is trying to influence some of the young girls that compete in a way that they shouldn't be doing, really. So we tried to do just women only, but it didn't work because we couldn't get enough women judges. And we had, at that time, about 25 judges, so we struggled with 3 at a certain time. But then people were saying, why is there only 3 judges? It's not really fair. So we then said, well, we can't do it. We tried it for a year. So we had to introduce other judges that we already have to let them gain experience, and then for them to start judging the bikini.
Okay. What's the role of the head judge?
The head judge, again, it's changed just recently, again, for the advancement of the sport, because it's so busy now. We have so many people wanting to compete. We used to have a system where the head judge stayed in front of the judges, collected the papers, and then took them to the statistician. But what was happening, because of the amount of competitors that you had, it was taking a little bit long. So what we decided to do, again with Pavel, the head judge would sit in the centre, and the judges would sit in either side, and the papers would be handed to the judge when he would be doing the call-out, for example. Let me describe the call-out system. What you have is a lineup. The judges are asked for the top 5. The top 5 are then passed to the centre. Then the secretary collates all the judges' scores if they think is in the top 5, and then given to the head judge, and the head judge then calls out the one with the most positions that the judges have asked to see. And that's how the system is worked with the head judge now. That works very, very well. It works the same in America and the same worldwide.
Does, for example, the head judge have the authority to say, you've scored him wrong, to another judge?
The only time that the judge would bring to the judge's, one of the other judges' attention is that there's either gynecomastia or injections in shoulders and things. He only brings it to the attention of the judge because some judges are really not that experienced. So he's just saying to him, just be aware that this person has this problem. And that's all the head judge does. He doesn't tell them to change their judging papers at all. The head judge has not got the authority to do that.
Okay. Regarding the coaches that coach competitors, does it help if a coach, for example, knows you personally, likes you, or knows some of the other judges, is networked?
Again, the system that the IFBB used, we used to give the competitors list to the judges. And I'll give you an example. Say if you're in Egypt or one of the other countries, you've got a lot of the judges that are very nationalistic, that they know that their athlete is number 1, for example. So the thing is that we don't do now is let the judges know where the athletes are or what the names are. They're just given numbers. So that cuts out the judge knowing who is who or where they're from. So favoritism doesn't really make any difference within the IFBB.
And so is that part of your role as General Secretary of the IFBB to continually improve the judging process?
If we can see any improvements that can be made to make things more efficient or more fair, we implement it right away.
So were you one of the people that implemented that new system of just calling the number out?
Yes.
Okay. I was going to ask you a question about the different physiques now. Obviously, physiques from when you were competing are quite different from how they are now. Have you got any opinion on those physiques? Which do you prefer? Or?
Again, I'll refer to Arnold. Arnold is still one of the most persons that's idolised by most bodybuilders even to this day. Arnold had such a fantastic physique, and my ideal is an Arnold type physique. Slim waist, big chest, big arms. The current trend is to be very heavily developed in the midsection, which has never been my ideal of a bodybuilder at all. As Arnold always said, yeah, you should be able to do a vacuum, which is a very small waist, but a lot of the modern day bodybuilders, because they're eating such huge amounts of protein, have a distended stomach, which is not something that we really like. Again, the judging system that we use, we are warning the judges that a distended stomach should be marked down, because it's aesthetically not correct. Nick, again, my ideal with judging is, I always use this analogy with any new judge. If you was Michelangelo and you were picking somebody for you to design a statue of 9 feet tall out of marble, you wouldn't be using someone with a big stomach, because it just wouldn't look right. Or someone with a little arm and a big arm. You would do things symmetrically. And this is what I always say to someone when they're judging. Think if you as Michelangelo, what you're looking at, and everything has to be in balance, everything has to be clean, no hidden marks anywhere. Again, tattoos is another thing that we should really touch on. Tattoos originally were something that was marked down because nobody used to have tattoos. And again, believe it or not, you were also marked down if you didn't have any hair. This is a rule.
So
how things
neither
have
you
changed.
or I would do very well at all.
But I used to have a lot of hair, Nick, at one time. I used to have black curly hair. But Oscar State, who was the one that implemented all of the rules, I used to have long conversations with Oscar. I said he was a stickler for rules and regulations. And I used to like some of his philosophy, but he could speak about 10 different languages, Oscar. And Oscar would always say, listen, a man should be a man. He said he should have no tattoos, no blemishes on his skin, a full head of hair. I wonder what he would think now in this day and age. Because tattoos are another thing that has to be taken into consideration. Again, with the analogy of Michelangelo, you wouldn't do a nice marble statue covered in tattoos. You've got to be able to see the muscle. You've got to be able to see, because some of the guys have really heavy tattoos who then, unfortunately, use cover-up to try and cover the tattoo. And basically then you can't see no definition, no quality muscle at all.
So they do get marked down.
Again, if you were judging and you had a guy with tattoos and one without, it's obviously, in my opinion, the one without would be more favourable for me. But again, it's up to the judge for him to decide that. I can't tell him that, no, we don't like tattoos, because now a lot of people have tattoos. My grandson is covered in tattoos. He says to me, Granddad, what do you think it is? And I don't like it. But again, you know, he's a young guy and he likes this kind of thing.
So the judging is obviously subjective. Every judge has got their own opinion. They know what they're looking for.
Yeah.
It must be very difficult when you get asked by a competitor to give feedback.
Well, again, it was easier when you had bodybuilding, because you could be more descriptive of someone with bigger arms or better legs or a better lat spread or better back. But now what you've got, this phenomenon of men's physique and bikini, when it first started, it was a little bit easier, but now, because it's so popular and because the standard has increased a lot, they train a lot now, they diet very well, they do cardio. They're all in very, very excellent shape. So it's very difficult to try and differentiate between them. The UK, in its wisdom, tried to make the men's physique with two poses that we introduced. The IFBB didn't have this at the time, but Pavel, again, my person that's involved within the IFBB, didn't think that to have an overhead pose with the men's physique was really something that they could do, because he said it would definitely go from this to this, and it was two different categories. So I said, well, it's up to the head judge in any country to say that this is not what they should allow. So we did it in the UK for a couple of years. For about 1 year we did it for. But what was happening, the guys, because they didn't know what they were supposed to be expected to do, were going from this to this. they were doing bodybuilding poses. And it was very difficult to stop them doing this because everybody was doing the same kind of thing on stage. So we decided to take the advice of our head chairman of the judges committee and take them 2 poses out. A lot of men's physique didn't like it, but there was no other alternative because it was developing into guys doing bodybuilding poses. So there's 2 different categories.
Yeah. Incidentally, why are board shorts allowed with men's physique?
Board shorts came from America. It was a guy called Steve Weinberg and Lee Thompson with the instigators of board shorts, but they hit on an idea that was already happening in the States. A lot of guys do surfing, and that's what they were wearing at the time. So they decided to do it there, and it took off really, really big in America, and then it came over here. It's taken off really well here, and worldwide, it's phenomenal. It's incredible.
Yeah.
I'd just like to say, Nick, I was speaking to you earlier on in Iran. Our president of the IFBB has just come back from Iran, and Iran had its first ever men's physique. And for the first contest, they had 500 competitors.
Yeah, that's phenomenal.
It is unbelievable. But this has happened in other countries. It's more achievable for more of the general public. They can go to a gym. A lot of guys now like to have a 6-pack. There's more guys in the gym that's able to achieve this. They don't need to diet or train or do the competition dieting for as long. And they're always in good shape. And this is the reason why it's popular. But it's not just here, it's worldwide.
And talking about new classes, the UKBFF currently don't do a disability class. I know you used to years ago, and there wasn't demand for it. I think nowadays, obviously with the Iraq and Afghanistan conflicts in particular, there are an increasing number of guys and girls who've lost limbs and have got other disabilities. Would the UKBFF consider reinstating a disability class?
Our policy is, Nick, is that if there's a category that's needed, we will always adopt that because that's part of what the IFBB/UKBF is. We try to give what people want. We did try the wheelchair category a few years ago, and it just wasn't taken up. We had 1 competitor, I think, at the British finals. And what we did at that particular stage, we said, because of the old theatres, that it's changed now, but a lot of the old theatres didn't have access for wheelchairs. So we said, instead of the theatre being worried about it, what we would do is let them go straight through to the British finals. And hopefully we were going to have at least 10 or 12 athletes. We ended up with 1 athlete. And unfortunately, it just didn't seem to be at that. But maybe it's changed, but that particular time, it wasn't really taken up by the wheelchair category or invalid in general.
Is there a number of competitors you would aim to get in order to introduce?
The IFBB system is, because we are a medal sport, we have 3 competitors. It has to be at least 3 competitors for it to be judged as a category. So a minimum of 3 competitors is what we would need. Okay. The more, the better, because obviously the better chances that they would stand. But we're prepared, if there's a call for it, to have any category. We've introduced the over 35s bikini because we, in our wisdom, didn't think that the girls of 35 would like to be in the bikini category, but it's obviously that there was. In one show last year, we introduced the bikini category, and there was 12 girls in the bikini category. All of them were invited to the British finals because all of them were of a great standard. So they were all pleased, and we're pleased because we try to please the athletes.
Do you think that the IFBB and the UKBFF run the risk of the physique and the bikini classes overpowering the competitions?
Well, we did worry about this last year, but when we did the stats of the British Championship, it was half and half. We thought that the bodybuilding would go down, but there was just as many people in the bodybuilding as well. There was about 250 of each, so it was still well attended, and we were pleasantly surprised. But a lot of people did actually say this, but it would never happen, Nick. We're a bodybuilding federation, and we would try and encourage it still, even to this day. I'm a bodybuilder, and I like people to be bodybuilders. But the thing is, Nick, everyone is a bodybuilder. Bikini, men's physique are bodybuilders in different degrees, but they train, they have the same group of muscle, they eat protein, the different degrees of training. Bodybuilders lift heavy weights, athletes in the bikini still train hard, but they're not lifting the same kind of weights as a bodybuilder. It's 2 different things, but they're still bodybuilders.
Yeah.
They may not like me saying that, but that they are. Anyone that trains in a gym is a bodybuilder.
Oh, I'm sure they'd love you saying that. I want to touch on a couple of things that have happened more recently in the UK. Firstly, I wanted to ask you about a decision that you took. There was a band athlete that was brought over to the UK to do a gym tour, and you called some of the affiliated UKBFF gyms to say you didn't want them to host this band athlete, and if they did, they would be banned from the UKBFF.
No, I didn't say they would be banned, Nick.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they were told that
we know, you know, this word is used a lot within our industry. People are being banned left, right and centre. We never ban anybody. All we do is suspend them, and they're suspended for a certain period. That's all we ever do.
Okay. So those particular gyms would have been and were suspended had they hosted this athlete. And that caused a number of issues. Do you regret that decision at all?
Not at all. It's part of the IFBB regulations, and as you said earlier on in the conversation, I'm a stickler for the rules. My ideal is Oscar State, and the rules are the rules. If everybody knows what the rules are, then they are happy to do that. We have the rules which are on the internet. People can read the rules. They've been there since 1946.
And that brings me on to the other question, which is something that I know a lot of people want to know the answer to, or at least for me to pose the question to you, and that is that the IFBB and the UKBFF are very strict on not allowing competitors to compete in other federations' competitions. Mm-hmm. Is there any chance that that might be lifted?
Again, the rule has been there since 1946. The IFBB, when they originally started, were the one that was there to try and do competitions worldwide for the athletes. The IFBB do shows, I think there's over 2,000 competitions per year within the IFBB in 191 countries. All these 191 countries all have the same rule, and the rule is that once you are a member of the IFBB, they like you to stay loyal because they're the ones that put the competitions on, the Amateur Olympia, the Mr. Olympia, the Arnold. All of these shows are put on by the IFBB. So all you're asking for is for people that are part of that is to be loyal to that.
But the athlete would probably say, but what's the problem with me competing with another federation?
There isn't any problem with them competing with another federation. It's up to them. We don't make them become a member of ours, but once they become a member, we're just asking them to abide by the rules, that's all. We have a situation, I mentioned NABBA earlier on. We had a guy, Ant Bales, who was a NABBA Mr. Universe, and approached me and said, could I ever compete within the IFBB? I said, by all means you could. He was told, unfortunately, by certain individuals that you would never get a fair judgment coming from NABBA. And I said, Ant, you'll be judged as fairly as everybody else. Ant actually competed in a qualifier, won the qualifier, entered the British Championships, won the overall British Championships, and is now an IFBB Pro. So the route is there for everyone to follow, Nick. All we ask is for them to abide by the rules once they become a member. And that's what the IFBB policy is.
Okay. And is that because the IFBB is a business, so it's fair for them to say, right, if you want to be part of our business, then these are our rules, you've got to stick by them?
It could be classed as maybe as a business, yeah, because it has to be run professionally now. But a lot of the people were volunteers when they first started, but the IFBB is growing daily, Nick, and it's getting more and more difficult to handle the growth of the IFBB, even within our own UK. The amount of people that's been joining just recently is just unbelievable. So it's all positive. So if there was people objecting to rules and regulations, we wouldn't have the people that's accepting this and joining the federation. Because, Nick, we don't hide anything. We give people, when they ask to join, all of the rules and regulations, and they do, and most of them abide by them.
Okay. And what does the UKBFF aim to do? I mean, does it fund athletes to go to different countries?
Well, just recently, I'm glad you've touched on that subject, Nick. We are, IFBB, just recently have been given the opportunity to compete for the first time ever in the European Games, which is going to be held in Azerbaijan, in Baku. and they're actually introducing classic bodybuilding and women's fitness. So the UKBFF is actually going to do, for the first time ever, subsidise triathletes, because we can send triathletes to Baku to compete. The athletes are going to get a subsidy from the UKBFF now. Every month they're going to get a retainer for them to be able to compete in Baku. But it has to be drug-free, and the athletes have to be drug-free. Before they go, they're going to be tested. While they're there, they're going to be tested. If they win, they're going to be tested. So the IFBB are happy that this is going to happen within the European Games. It's a big step in the right direction, because the IOC are also involved in the European Games.
Oh, good. And so, just to be clear then, so the UKBFF uses the funds that it makes
to send athletes. Last year, we spent £65,000 sending people to compete. We're the only federation that does that. So all the money that's generated by all the shows that we produce is ploughed back into sending the athletes to compete. To send 12 athletes to America cost quite a bit of money. We sent 30 athletes to the Arnold in Madrid. We pay for probably the winners to go to Madrid, but any athletes can go if they want to, but they have to pay for their own expenses. The Europeans and Wales, all expenses are paid, airfare, food, accommodation, everything is paid for. Right. And all of this money is generated through the shows that we promote.
Is it a non-for-profit organisation?
It is a non-for-profit organisation,
okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, and just finally, Bill, I wanted to ask you about where you see the sport going. How do you think it's developing?
Again, the way things are at the moment, Nick, it's difficult to predict, because no one could have said 3 years ago that we'd be talking about the men's physique and the women's bikini the way that's become now. It's a total change of the whole industry, because I think it's now good to train, and a lot of people train, and they want somewhere to be able to show that they're training in a gym, and this is the ideal with the men's physique and the women's bikini. I think this is the reason why it's popular. When someone first trains in the gym, they don't think they're going to have the ability to transform the body, and when they do start training, they say, oh, I'm not looking so bad, and then they start thinking on the lines of competing. So we're there to try and produce the shows where they can get on stage, Nick, and again, able them to go and see the world, which is what we're happy that they do.
Yeah. And just finally, I should ask you, what drives you? You're in a position where you're bound to get criticism. What keeps you motivated and keeps you striving forward?
What keeps me motivated to see somebody when they compete for the first time and they win a trophy, and I echo again the way I felt, because to win your first trophy is absolutely fantastic, and you don't know this until you're actually on stage and experience that. A lot of people that say, you know, they're only the winners that's doing well, but we have a policy that anyone that gets on stage is already a winner, as far as we're concerned, because it takes a lot for someone to strip down, get on stage, do a routine, and normally once they've done it, they want to come back for more, because it's a great feeling.
Great. Okay. Well, Bill, thank you very much for taking the time to do this interview.
It's been a pleasure, Nick. You know, I'm just happy to further the cause of bodybuilding within the UK, because I'm very proud of what we've achieved.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Nick.